FAB 2.0, it's got to be happening sometime soon. Well, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Kitchen Table TCG. I hope that you are having yourself a fantastic day. We haven't done a regular background video in a while. It's been a crazy couple weeks. Hope you're doing well. We have this much anticipated FAB 2.0 thing that James White dropped in a recent interview about 2 months ago. He said FAB 2.0, we're gonna fix some of the issues with Unlimited and First Edition and the collector side of the market. And I want to talk about it. I thought we would have some information by now. I know a lot of people thought that. And I've already done like a couple conversation pieces on it, but today I wanted to talk about the best case scenario, my opinion on the best case scenario, and my opinion on the worst case scenario for what is FAB 2.0. Again, this is just my opinion. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section of this. And I am going to come from a collector's perspective, a kind of investor collector attitude, not as much from the player base, although don't leave because a lot of this is going to be connected to the player side of the game. But as somebody who has been playing and collecting and investing and spending money on Flesh and Blood cards for over like a year and a half now, I have a lot of things that I think that this is a really interesting topic for me in FAB 2.0. So let's get into it. Best case scenario. I have 3 ideas on the best case scenario for what FAB 2.0 looks like, for what it talks about, and for what it addresses. Number 1 scenario for FAB 2.0 is that they fix the box. And I think that they, based on what James White said, I think that this is going to be kind of the highlight of FAB 2.0. But I think that First Edition and Unlimited currently have a problem, and that problem is identified by the current current First Edition boxes not having any value over top of the Unlimited boxes. If you look at Tales of Aria, you can get First Edition Tales of Aria at map, and meanwhile, there is a Unlimited Tales of Aria that's also under map but should be at map. And so there's an issue in this pricing. As an LGS, you don't want to take this new stuff because if you can't sell Unlimited because of First Edition, it's just a whole thing. So I particularly like the idea where they keep the First Edition and they keep the Unlimited, and I like the idea where they have a buy a box topper promo that is LGS exclusive and it is release weekend exclusive. So you pre-order your box from your LGS, you go in, you get your box at LGS, and they give you a box topper for every box that you purchase that has a cold foil in it, randomized, right? Completely random, the same, whatever, just like it would be a card in the box, but it's a randomized cold foil. And then those go away. Those are never given out. Again, they are only for that first wave of allocation. And at any box that you buy, you would get one of those. And then the booster box itself is a completely unlimited product that they can just keep printing to demand, and it keeps that First Edition, keeps that cold foil really valuable. But here's the thing, that's my idea, that's what I like, but this is LSS's job, and I trust that they will do something, and this is what I think the best case scenario is that they do something to make First Edition special and unique and make those cold foils really valuable and important and a collector's piece, and when the Unlimited one comes out, it doesn't deteriorate the value from those who want to collect and have those as a piece in their arsenal of collection. So yeah, and it needs to, this idea also, it needs to incentivize the local game store, not the big box online, retailer thing. It needs to incentivize the local game store where this game started, not the snowballs and all the other things. Like, it needs to incentivize going to your LGS, or going there and pre-ordering and going there on pre-release night. That's what it needs to incentivize. Number 2, best case scenario, is transparency on gameplay improvements. Flesh and Blood investors from the very beginning have been in Flesh and Blood for the long term. That's been a very, very popular conversation point. You can see it with a lot of other games. People are talking about short-term gains. Flesh and Blood investors have always been focused on the end goal of being a long-term success for the game, and nothing's changed that. But in order to do that, you have to be connected to the growth of the game. And this is where those players come in, like I said earlier in this video. In my opinion, the print run numbers mean very little for the success of the investment or collecting side of Flesh and Blood. It just doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how few boxes you printed if the back door for the game is big and people are coming in and then going out and not sticking. If the stickiness of Flesh and Blood isn't there from a gameplay side, then it doesn't matter how few boxes that you printed. And so I would like to see some transparency on how we are going to keep players in the house to close that back door and close that back door of broken heroes and unnecessary power creep. I understand that you have to have some power creep. You have to change the game a little bit from set to set. I understand that, but the fact of the matter is we've had the last few releases have had inherently broken heroes and some things that made the game unfun to play at the levels that Flesh and Blood and LSS are advertising. People they claim they didn't like playing against Chain. They claimed that Briar was too tone deaf and just inability to have any skill based around it. And now we have Starvo, who's getting Living Legend status, and it's just kind of rolling the Starvo, whatever. So what I would like to hear, and what would give me confidence in the longevity of this game, the game being an investment piece for the long term, is hey, we were doing this for playtesting and design and whatever, but now we are going to do this. And just an acknowledgement that there has to be a shift so that when a new box is printed, there's not something that just is warping the entire formats and warping the entire player base around one particular hero. So I would love to hear that in the best case scenario for Flesh and Blood 2.0, that kind of transparency on how we're going to improve the gameplay side of things. Number 3, I'd love to see marketing. I'd love to see us flesh out the marketing of Flesh and Blood to a much bigger thing. This is a really tough thing because there's nothing to really look at. Magic the Gathering doesn't need to do any marketing. We saw this, and we've talked about the Alta Fox article that came out about Magic the Gathering, whatever. They don't need to do advertising because they view these alternative card games, they view Pokemon, they view Yu-Gi-Oh! As a onboarding ramp to their game. That's how they view those things. And Pokemon has a massive marketing strategy. You see Pokemon literally everywhere. They're in Burger King, they're in whatever. You see Pokemon everywhere. Flesh and Blood can't do that because Magic is already doing it. They have to do some form of marketing in order to help their game grow at a different level, at a different rate than what Magic is doing. And I don't have massive solutions to this. This is one of those things that I think if you look historically is one of the issues with new trading card games, is it's hard to figure out how do you exactly market this, but something's got to go. Something's got to happen to give some excitement to the game, to reach new audiences and to grow this to a level. So I'd love to see some marketing strategy behind the game. Anyway, let's move on to the worst case scenario. So the best case scenario, again, fix the box, transparency on how gameplay is going to improve, and then an increase in marketing and promotion for this game, however they decide to do that. The worst case scenario, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, I'm very excited for Flesh and Blood 2.0. I think it's going to instill a lot of confidence in the Flesh and Blood market. That being said, the worst case scenario for me personally, my opinion of that, is that they do take away the difference between first edition and unlimited. They remove that. I think if they had one box that was printed in man, there were cold foils in it, it would just make the first edition thing of the past look a little sad. Like, hey, that's a failed thing. That's not something that was successful. And when that attitude happens on it, for a game that's only been around this amount of time, I just don't think that that's good for the market. I don't think that that's going to install a lot of confidence. If cold foils for the next 10 years, if there's nothing special about them, if you open a box and you get a cold foil and it's a $4 or $5 rare, and there've been a bunch printed and there's no limit on them or whatever, then it's just simply not that exciting, and the cold foil loses its value. And I think that's what Flesh and Blood had, is that the cold foil was special, it was unique, it was creative, it was, nobody else was doing anything like it. And then we just did so much of it. You've got cold foil this, cold foil that. You can get cold foils anywhere. Everfest boxes have cold foils, and the Majestic ones are 15 to 20 bucks. Like, they just oversaturated, in my opinion, oversaturated the market with cold foils. And by taking this and not adjusting it and saying, hey, we're just going to do one box that's going to have cold foils in it, I think that that would be a mistake. I think that that would be something that would devalue the brand of cold foils long term, so that these old cold foils don't really seem special anymore, because you have all these cold foils that aren't special. So anyway, that's just my opinion. I think we're already seeing this happen, even with like cold foil commons from WTR and ARC at like very low prices, $140, $150, $160 compared to where they were, $500, $600, $700. Meanwhile, you've got the, I think part of that is that it's just not special anymore. You can get a cold foil anywhere. So, I think this would result in us, this idea of unlimited printing that's, no first edition, no whatever, it's just one printing. This would result in a lot of us still loving the game and being super excited about it, but there's not that thing, that graspy thing that makes it super unique and fun and exciting, and there's just not that first edition spice that really helps the game grow on a level that is different and that we saw previously. And then the second thing that's a worst case scenario, in my opinion, is this attitude that nothing is wrong with the game, just be better. And this is a tough one, because there are a lot of really, really good Flesh and Blood players. There are a lot of really good professional TCG players who can show up and play whatever hero is, decent in the meta and beat the heroes that are really good in the meta. I understand that, and you need that. You need a skill gap in a TCG. It's very, very important. I don't want a tone deaf TCG that's, it requires no skill and it's all luck. Nobody wants that, and that's one of the reasons that all of us were so gravitated towards Flesh and Blood. That's one of the reasons that we all went to Flesh and Blood, because the skill gap is big. But when you say nothing's wrong and you just got to be better and it's just the most skillful player, I think that that's a little bit tone deaf. I think that that's a little bit like, yes, I understand there needs to be a skill gap, but there also needs to be a space for the casual player to feel like they can go to an event and compete there, and not just get completely demolished. And there needs to be some level of skill gap increase, where it's not just the best player is going to completely demolish, and it doesn't matter what we do for the gameplay in terms of printing things, because the best player will figure it out, and there's only one or two solutions and they'll have it. I think there needs to be a little bit of an increase in the ability for that skill gap to widen. So if the skill gap is up here, and if it's up here, it just needs to go this way. I'm not saying that the top of the gap needs to come down. The top of the gap needs to stay the same, but the bottom of the gap needs to bring it down a little bit, where it's a little bit easier for people to feel like they can compete and figure out the meta, in my opinion. The other avenue of the side of things is, again, nothing is wrong, just be better, works for that person that's way up here in skill, but it doesn't give anything for the casual player to really feel like there's a place for them in Flesh and Blood. And you've heard this said. I don't like quoting Rudy a ton in the videos, because I know this channel feels a lot like Rudy's channel sometimes. But one of the things that Rudy talked about for a long time, when the Magic the Gathering, first off, the Magic Pro Tour is back. It was just announced this past week. But when Magic announced that the Pro Tour was going away, that it wasn't going to ever be here again, Rudy basically did a video. He was like, it doesn't matter, because the people who have this level of skill that are playing in that competitive, they just don't add there's so many more people in the game. It's such a huge game of people that, like, those, couple 100,000 people, whatever it is, I don't actually know how many, 100,000 people who compete in Magic the Gathering, they don't affect the overall market of the trading card game, because the casual environment is so big. The kitchen table environment is so big. And in my opinion, this is the biggest stretch goal for Flesh and Blood. This is the biggest conversation point on the success of Flesh and Blood. If you want Flesh and Blood to be the next Magic the Gathering, to be that next big TCG that is widely adapted, you have to have an arena for casual players to feel like they have a place to enjoy the game and to dive into it and feel like they can climb their way up the ladder. You can't just have something on the 12th floor and no ladder to get to the 12th floor or get to the 8th floor or get to the 5th floor. You have to have a way and an arena for people to climb this ladder up to really feel like there's a place for them where I know I'm never going to be at the 12th floor, but I can set a goal and say, hey, I would love to play at the 4th floor level. And there's some things that are scratching the surface of this. Obviously, when you have a Pro Tour and Pro Quest and whatever, there's some, skirmish events. There's some things that are scratching the surface of this. But I think what we need is a really big area, a big arena, a big activity for the casual player to really grasp a hold of. This is why I've talked about so much on the channel. PvE, player versus environment, where you have a way that's really creative. It's kind of a mixture of like Dungeons and Dragons and TCGs and like Magic the Gathering, Arc Enemy. Like there's a way to do it that's really engaging, where you can create a Commander-esque type environment where you're working together, in Commander when you're like, hey, we need to beat this guy because his board state's massive. This idea of creating a environment for the casual player. It doesn't have to be PvE though. It could also be just other formats with support and encouragement to play. And to give these kind of LGSs reasons to host these events and that kind of thing. I think Commoner is a great format for this, where you can actually hop in and there's a lot of dynamics, and I would love to see some official support for that too. Just an arena for the casual player to really express themselves and feel like they have a place in the Flesh and Blood community and in the Flesh and Blood environment. I think that would be really, really important. So the negative of that, the worst case scenario is no, nothing's wrong, just be better at the game. So anyway, those are my best case scenarios and worst case scenarios for FAB 2.0. Again, I have no clue when we're gonna actually see FAB 2.0. I honestly thought we would see it by now. I anticipate we will see it soon. I hope that you have yourself a fantastic day. I hope that you are falling more and more in love with trading card games and the collecting and the fun side of it and the gameplay side. Like, I hope that you're really being given life in this world. If not, if trading card games don't bring joy to you, then what are you doing? Like, why are you watching this channel? Why are you still in the hobby? Sell your cards. Go get a motorcycle, go do something else, because if this isn't giving you joy, then what's the point of it? So hope you have yourself a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to the people around you, and let me know what you think about FAB 2.0 in the comment section below.